Welcome back to the PPR show here with another episode. Got my guy from the FF universe, Jesse Moeller at jmoeller05, and my man Sam at Sam Waldorf. Where's Waldorf? I believe on X, but at Sam Waldorf for YouTube. Here to talk some day one recap again, but then also go over some sleepers and some other exciting news for day two of the NFL draft here on the PPR show. Sam and Jesse, how's it going? What are y'all excited about? And just how's life?
I don't know how else to say except last night was the watch of my life with 6 quarterbacks at the first 12 picks, and I was like, all right, we're off the rails. We're gonna let this play out. I don't know about you, Sam, but it was a very entertaining day to say the least.
Yeah, dude, I had a great time last night. Just for fun, I played this game where I poured a single shot, put it on the table, and the first time I was surprised, I took that shot, and let's just say it didn't take too long for that to go down the hatch. But yeah, I mean, great time, dude. I mean, when it comes down to it, good spot, bad spot, we're all just happy to be finally looking at some real stuff going on. So
100%. For sure. And I made a tweet right before the draft came on. The past 10 years, we have not seen a draft go with 6 quarterbacks. We've seen 2 with 5. I think it was 1 with 4, 1 with 1, 1 with 2, and then 2 with 3 or 3. So crazy day. Shout out the quarterbacks. Go get that money, get that 5th-year contract, and that's exciting. Whatever we say about our rankings and all that, I'm excited to see these young men achieve their dreams. I was telling my wife last night, actually, they showed I think it was Chala from Oregon State when he got drafted. They showed it, and he's with the family. And I actually told her, I was like, "This is the best part about the draft." And she's like, "What? Seeing their draft parties?" I was like, "Yeah, man. Like these are dreams coming true, right? You have kids that are with their grandma, or out fishing with their dad, and they get that call saying, 'Hey, son, you will come play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.'" So shout out all these young men getting drafted. Exciting opportunity. We're happy for you, and this is it. This is what you've been dreaming for. Go get it. But speaking on that, let's just go over some thoughts on day one. Sam, you talked about when you were surprised. Talk about that, and what else did you like about day one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I won't have to double down too much. We were all surprised by the Penix one. I think you can talk yourself into it. Go with whatever conspiracy theory you want about Penix. I mean, it's a reach. It's a risky move. I think something in the back of my mind is this may speak towards the 25 quarterback class. And same thing with kind of Bo Nix is like, are maybe these guys a little concerned that there's not too many prospects next year? And so they're trying to get them a year early. Other surprises, I don't know if the Chargers taking an offensive lineman is surprise because I think a lot of us saw it happening. But when it happened, we were kind of like, oh, okay. They I guess they're just gonna Jim Harbaugh this thing up and try to run over everyone. And the third surprise, and this one is just a little sillier, but it's fun, man, is we got to get these parents some media training on how to answer some of these questions better. Because I was cracking up at some of the answers that they were doing, man. I absolutely loved the one mom. It was for I think it was Brian Thomas's mom or something, when it was like, how far have you guys come? And she was like, we came from Baton Rouge. And you're like, okay, cool. But in general, great time. And those were my initial surprises for the first round.
Nice. Agree. I mean, I think we can all agree Penix is there. Like I said, man, hearing that Brian Thomas, that's the best part, though, right? It's like, man, you're there with your mom, with your dad, with your friends, your cousins, whatever you want to say, man. Just enjoying that moment. You only get that phone call once, so enjoying that moment there. All going at 5. Yeah, I mean, I think this just says what they're about to do. This is a statement saying we're getting our guy. We'll talk about some day 2 picks on who we think they can possibly get, because I think they continue, like you said, build that Harbaugh system and get his guys there. The quarterback class, with the Falcons, I was talking about with some people. I think there's a possibility that they have to forfeit maybe their first round pick next year because of this whole tampering thing with Kirk Cousins. So maybe it's like, hey, we won't have an opportunity to get a quarterback potentially that we may like at this next round, in the first round next year. So we gotta get a guy that if something happens to Kirk, we really like what he did, and he could go in there and just replace him as well. So I think it says more on that. But Penix is also a kind of raw talent where he does have to, still be groomed a little bit. So you get that 5th year option on him. Taking him at 108 though, that's a pretty steep price. That's heavy for it. Jesse, what are your thoughts on some of these draft picks in the first round?
Yeah, the whole tampering thing's weird because we had the Brady situation with Tampa Bay where that's why they got docked so heavily because he met with him in the boat. So like that's kind of why the first round pick was there. And then we had the other tampering charge where it's like a 3rd round pick with like the Broncos the previous year. So it's kind of hard to parse through where that charge is going to be. Like we kind of see with suspensions where like maybe it's 2 games, maybe it's 8, depending on how Goodell feels. So it's kind of that with those. But I think the most shocking thing is, those quarterbacks going so early. And then what it did is it forced basically.
Cut out the...
I mean, it probably forced other people to have to change their mind just to finish his sentence there. The people going after, if those QBs were there, I think that's why a lot of those O linemen ended up going,
Yeah, I agree. And, going on to that, to me, it was wild that we didn't have our first defensive guy go until pick 15. Right, I think that was a huge part there. But we saw them slide. You saw a little bit of a run at the end there too. But seeing that's just you made JJ. The Jets did a fantastic move trading up 1 spot. Right, I'm glad they did that and give their capital to trade up to 3 overall. Right, like I think a few of us have been saying, since that McCarthy's gonna be there at 11. Don't take this smoke. But they made that move to say, hey, someone potentially could trade up to us if we don't call them right now. So I feel as soon as they said, hey, Penix went 8, and then they saw, all right, Odunze go next, we're calling the Jets right now because we want this pick. We want to make sure we get our guy. So a smooth move there.
100%. That's that Falcons move that really threw everything into flux. Like, supposedly a lot of those teams in that range were waiting on Penix to be there. Like we talked about the Broncos and the Raiders. They were waiting to kind of see him fall. When Atlanta makes that move, it sends the Jets immediately into panic where they're like, all right, we have to get up and get McCarthy because if we miss out on McCarthy, we don't want Nix, right? Because they don't want to do that. So that's why they specifically trade up. The Jets just bank capital and move back 1 spot. And then you see the Broncos and Raiders try to do their thing too. So it's really just caused it all to flux where all these top end talents go, the top 14 picks. Then we see a run on defensive guys and tackles. And then it's kind of like the end of the draft. All these wide receivers are here. All right, let's take some wide receivers, have a little fun with it. And then you see Carolina trading the last pick, trading back in to get that 5th round year with Leggett, which I don't think they needed to do. But, I mean, I guess they wanted that 5th round year with him. So, yeah, it was just a fun night where everything just kept going and going. You're like, this just keeps happening this way? It's like, yeah, it's just I'm still shook by it, if you could tell.
You can really see the focus, and I think you can just see it in the NFL. It's like, you see the shift to offense and you see it with the draft picks. It's not hard. It's like people want these freak athlete wide receivers. They want the quarterbacks and they want the 320 athletic offensive tackles and offensive linemen. And if you want to go get those guys, you got to draft them in the 1st and go get your guy, man. I'm never upset when my team drafts an offensive lineman. I'm all about it.
Yeah, I was thrilled with how the draft went for the Seahawks because they stood there and they let Byron Murphy follow them, and I was like, this is glorious. This fits them ideally. So, like, as a Seahawks fan, like this was the perfect scenario for them because those high end defensive talents kind of fall. Like we saw Verse slide, we saw Turner slide, we saw all of these guys. We thought maybe they go top 10, and they kept falling. And it's like I'm like, dude, the Seahawks are gonna get Murphy. He's gonna fall right to them, and I'm like. And they said afterwards he was the top guy on their board. And I'm like, yeah, no surprise. He's awesome. So for certain teams that played it out, it worked out just so well for them.
Yeah, with Murphy, we did our mock before that. That's where we had him going. So I was excited to see that Seattle ended up taking him. Going on Turner, that's a huge steal for Minnesota there. They get and we talked about that they just basically did a Houston Texans. They got their guy on offense they believe they can build around. Now they got their guy on defense they can build around. 2 young pillars on your team, which is a great move. Verse going to the Rams, that's going to be deadly. He's going to be a phenomenal edge rusher, and they're going to plug him in right away as well. Before we move on to our first question here, what is out of the not named the quarterback or one of the top 3 receivers, what is your favorite pick in this draft in the first round? Sam, what is yours?
Favorite pick for me, that's tough. I was gonna say I think I kind of got taken. I think the most logical pick. I love the Seahawks pick. So just to comment on yours, couldn't have picked a better guy for McDonald's defense. I think I'm just going to take the buzz, and not necessarily that I'm going to trade up to go get this guy, but Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs, you got to love it, even if it's just for watchability on Sunday and watching these games. I honestly think, I don't think it's Tyreek Hill. I think it's Deshaun Jackson. I think people are thinking wrong about this. I think the Deshaun Jackson Andy Reid comparison makes a lot more sense when it comes to Xavier Worthy, but that's just fun, and I'm excited to watch those red zone highlights once every couple of weeks where it's an 80-yard bomb.
Oh yeah,
So that was one of my favorite picks for sure.
And you brought up Wardy. Yeah, be prepared for the community to start saying, "Oh, here's the Xavier Wardy is now the new heel." So, Jesse, what was your favorite pick outside of the quarterbacks and top 3 receivers?
Yeah, we've already heard people talking about taking him over Bowers at the 108, in which tells you how much everyone hates the Bowers landing spot going to the competition with Adams and the QB situation there, still uncertainty. So hey, Vegas, just go get Kirk Cousins. Make this simple for everybody. Just go get Kirk Cousins, take the hit, and move on because you guys need a quarterback. But I'll parse through that later. For me, it's Ricky Pearsall going to San Francisco. There's no he's a Swiss Army knife of a player. And guess what? Kyle Shanahan just has a guy he could deploy everywhere. Obviously, I'm expecting them to trade either Debo and Ayuk. It seems like it's more Debo related now, but I'm assuming them to move off one of those guys because now you have a younger guy who you have control for the next 4 years, 5 years with him. And he just gets to be a guy that's a weapon on that offense. He's not the yak guy that Debo is or Ayuk is, but he's just a very, really good player. And we talked about him a bunch. I say you know how much I love him. So him going to San Francisco, and guess what? You get an offensive genius to do that with you, and you just it's beautiful. When I saw that happen, I was like, yes, this is perfect. If you want a defensive player, yeah, I really like Quinyon Mitchell going to the Eagles because that was that cornerback run we saw where like the first cornerback went, and the Eagles were like, no, we got to get the guy right here. So Quinyon Mitchell going to the Eagles fits them perfectly because they need a CB1 on that defense. And really just helps them for this year and long term. So I think defensively, they knocked it out of the park right there.
Love both those. I mean, you talk about Ricky Pearsall. Yeah, I think the Eagles on the move. I think they're going to try to get some 3rd-round picks for him. I don't know if they'll move him for a second just because he's a little bit older. He's still, technically in his prime, if you will, 28. But I think they'll, we're going to see it not in that second, but coming back to the end of it, maybe end the second, but definitely, a couple thirds for him. And then you said Keon Mitchell, phenomenal. That was another guy that people thought, towards the end, you started seeing him in top 10 as well. So getting him in 20, great pick. You have Arnold to the Lions, another one that's phenomenal. A big one I like, is probably going to be, I gotta say, Turner, going out there. And I think that's just, like I said, that pillar piece for them to go get it. Legette's interesting because I think he would have been there, but you got Deontay there. And it could be different, but I just don't. And Thielen, so Legette's going in there, possibly playing your F or anything like that to be in the slot. I feel you could have got him, and I would have rather see like a Franklin there or something like that. Not necessarily for the capital, but I just think that would have been a better choice. But hey, they got their guys, so you can't be mad at that. Let's get it.
It's weird because he's basically taking over you need him to take over the Thielen role in that offense. Like that's where he needs to play. So having Thielen there, it's like 2 guys competing for the same spot. Oh yeah, they also have Mingo as well, a guy who they don't know what they're doing with. So yeah, it's just the Panthers being the Panthers, man. Like that one, I like Legette and the skill set he offers, but he needs to be schemed up perfectly in the right situation. So he can't be a guy that plays outside like that. So yeah, it's interesting, to say the least.
Oh yeah, big Phoenix energy, man. Love it. I'll do that. And this was this is what I was, Dolphins were tampering with Brady. Yeah, that came in first. So big part, a lot of things to come. But enough with day 1. That was a great draft, and the draft is not over. We're into day 2, which is round 2 and 3. So Sam, go ahead and tell me, what are you watching for day 2? Is it someone to trade up? Is it players? Just talk to us about day 2 and your surprises.
Yeah, for sure, man. So the 3 things I have written down here for day 2. First off, this may just be a guy I really like, but I'm really curious to see where Mike Sandersill goes. I just think he's a very good defensive player. I don't know if the Chargers take him. I'm curious to see if the Chargers just take 6 Michigan players starting now, just for fun. But I just think Sandersill's a good hybrid kind of player that is really going to do really well in the NFL. And I just like that he kind of transitioned over from wide receiver. And I just think he has a lot of growing left to do. I'm very curious to see if someone takes the risk with Sweat. I'm really curious to see if someone is willing to take that risk because it kind of reminds me of a 80% of like the Jeffrey Simmons situation where it's like the Titans got a really good player because there were some question marks and a little trouble, but like everyone knew Simmons was a very good player, and Sweat could be absolutely amazing in some certain situations, but we'll see if he keeps falling or if he goes kind of in the first 15 picks of this second round. And then I think the obvious one is just wide receiver landing spots, man. I could list 10 wide receivers, Franklin Mitchell, Coleman, McConkey, whatever you want to say, and then all the sleeper ones even after that. So I'm just really excited to see what happens with some of these guys. And especially the ones that get that early second round draft capital, because we've seen a lot of very successful NFL and dynasty assets come out of that early second round. Higgins, Pickens, Pittman, the list goes on and on. There's a lot of very good players that get drafted in 33 through 45 or whatever you want to call it.
That's fair. Jesse, I'll let you comment on here. Two things though that you brought up, Mike Sarisdale first. I'm doing mine, and I'll bring up on X my full what I think day 2 predictions. Sarisdale's someone I'm keep looking at when people need a cornerback and they're on the clock, but he keeps dropping just because there's another position I need that I have a player higher in evaluation. So right now in the second round, I don't have him, but he's probably gonna come off in the third round for me. So Rondre Sweat, I have Houston taking him in those top picks there. I think that's just going to fit a huge role for them with him and Will Anderson there. So I just think that just kind of reads a D'Amico Ryans type thing. Jesse, what about you? What are some surprises that you may look into? The wide receivers, obviously, and we're going to talk more about wide receivers. But
yeah, and to your point on Sweat, I think that's a really good spot for him, or him in the Bengals at pick 40. I think it's 49. Like they could use him right in the middle. So I'd see one of those spots just seems like the perfect landing spot for you. You put him in the middle, he plugs up everything for you and just helps out the defense a lot that way. So I'm very curious to see how that works out. But yeah, to your guys' point, early in the second round, we have a ton of teams with wide receiver need. So this is going to shape how our rookie dynasty drafts go from here this point forward. And I mean, if we're looking for a running back, maybe one of the running backs sneaks into the back end of this range, because you're looking at some of these teams back here. Like I know people love Nick Chubb in Cleveland. Could be a spot for cheap club in Cleveland. We have Dallas at 56 going. Tampa Bay needs a guy. Like there's a lot of teams in the back end of the second round that need a running back. So I think it's going to be early and heavy at the wide receivers early. And then towards we get to the back of the second round, I expect to see like 1 or 2 running backs go. And that'll kind of round out our mid-second range of rookie drafts. So I'm excited to see who goes where and who we like, because we saw Leggett go and people are very like, we don't know how to feel about Leggett because he's such a risky profile. When we get some of the Lad McConkeys, the Troy Franklins, those guys that kind of fall and they get the spots, I think that's going to kind of push up into the early second round. So I'm very excited to see where they all go today.
Do y'all think right now for mine in the first 5 picks, I have 4 wide receivers going in the second round? We had 6 quarterbacks go in the first round yesterday? For your rookie drafts, are 6 quarterbacks going in the first round? If not, how many? Sam, what do you think?
I don't think 6.
Yeah,
I
Superflex.
think
Assume Superflex.
Superflex. I think I could see 5 with the 5th one maybe being like 111, 112. I think there's a pretty good 10 right now, and I definitely wouldn't touch Penix or Nix in that top 10. The other 4 QBs I think are very solid in that 1 through 10, and I would be happy to take any of them in that 6 through 10 specifically, besides Daniels and Caleb, obviously, who are going to go higher. Penix and Nix I think are going to be late 1, early 2. I think if you have an early 2, late 1, I think you kind of lucked into some pretty good guys to decide between. And just like we've talked about with the running backs, someone's going to get drafted today. And if it's to the Cowboys or the Giants or the Chargers, and it's one of these Brooks, Benson, name your other favorite one, I do really think that they kind of have 111, 112 within their ability to go there. So it's going to be very interesting when it comes to that. But 6, I think, would be a reach just because Penix isn't going to play this year. And I think people are going to look a little just closer to next season only.
Yeah. And to your point with Knicks, that offense looks rough. Like the skill, I don't feel great about putting Knicks, a guy who was very scheme dependent at Oregon. And he did a lot of good things with those weapons, but like you're putting him into an offense. And I know Sean Payton, he's supposedly a quarterback wizard, but yeah, I'm a little like, I don't know about the situation. So mid-second, I'm fine with that range. I really don't want to take him in the first round. Like that just seems like I'd much rather trade him for a productive veteran quarterback if I'm needed a quarterback. If you want to wait with Penix a couple of years, take him in the mid-second, totally fine with that. It'll pay off at some point. They're kind of doing the Jordan Love thing. Obviously, the only difference is he's like 4 years older than Jordan Love, but he was coming out. So if you want to wait till the 28-year-old quarterback to start, like that's fine. But it's just so much is in flux because of that pick and how it shapes our rookie drafts, where those quarterbacks are going to get pushed up. Someone will take them though, so I'll probably miss out on that. I'm okay missing out on them, like the late one.
So, Seb, to your point, 10 solid picks. Let's say hypothetically, the Cousins gets traded to Jesse brought up Las Vegas right now. Does that move Penix into the top 10?
Oh, easily. Yeah, I mean, if it looks like he's going to be the starter, it's a great situation. It's the same reason we all really like Kirk Cousins more in a redraft sense than a dynasty sense, just because he's going to get bumped up and we are looking at his age. But I also just think, like, unless that like signing gets reversed because of tampering, like the salary stuff behind that probably isn't going to work out. But it is a fun idea to think about, and it would make us love Penix. And like, I mean, you could make an argument to take Penix over McCarthy if Cousins isn't there. Like, he's got the offense and he's got the offensive coordinator and the weapons. So,
yeah, that's fair.
It's gonna be fun.
I love that. And so, Sam, you also talked about, to pick your favorite running back. So let's go into this segment. Who is the first running back off the board for you in the second or in day two? Who's the first running back?
If it's me on the clock as the GM, I'm taking Trey Benson. I just think he is more explosive than Brooks. And I think just the tiebreaker might be the coming off the injury. I mean, we can all pretend this situation that Brooks doesn't get hurt. I'm down in Austin, man. I like rooting for Brooks. I like watching these guys. But we can't pretend that he doesn't have an ACL injury and he's not coming off it. And I think we all want the Cowboys to take a running back, and they're ready to go. And they're not going to want to have to risk someone coming off an injury for the second straight season. I mean, look at Tony Pollard last year. He didn't really get going until week 10, 11, 12. And you can't tell me that everyone in that room doesn't remember that. And as much as we make fun of the Cowboys, like, they're actually very good drafters when it comes down to it. It's this really fun, like, juxtaposition is like, we like to tease the Cowboys about all these things, but they've been amazing in the NFL draft. So I think picking up an extra third round pick yesterday was actually really big for them, and probably points to that they definitely are going to get a running back in the second or third round now that they have that extra pick.
That's fair. Right now, I think Benson is the first running back off the board. I don't have it to the Cowboys, though. I have Cincinnati getting Benson in the second round. He's been my RB1 since October or so, if not before that. Just really love his thing, and I think that slides very well into what Joe Mixon was for the team. You have Zach Moss and you have Chase Brown there that can easily be the segue or the counterpart to him as well there. So I really love that. I think that's it. I think Brooks, though, I mean, I put him to the Cowboys there. I just think that's his dream landing spot in the second round. Jesse, what do you think? Who's the first RB off the board?
Yeah, Brooks has been my guy, and if he goes to the Cowboys, I think that's just ideal fit. You want them to sign Ezekiel Elliott in that situation, so you want someone to kind of like let him slowly progress along. Like, I know we're talking about him being ready for training camp. It's still the year 2 that's really the bonus point, but if he can still show the explosiveness and ability, because he's not as explosive and he's not as athletic as, say, Benson, who we talked about, like, get him a good offensive line. Like, you want to limit kind of his vision issues that pop up. So if he has a good offensive line, a good situation, similar to DeAndre Swift, what we saw in Philadelphia, what we're going to see in Chicago, like, you want him to be able to work in continuity together. So if he goes to that ideal spot, but theoretically, like, we see Braylon Allen go to the Cowboys, and people are super on the fence about him, but they're going to love that. And they're going to be like, oh my gosh, Braylon Allen with the Cowboys. Like, you put him late second, early third there. It's wheels up. So whoever goes to, like we talked about, the Chargers, the Cowboys, any one of those dream landing spots where it seems very open, like, they're going to get propped up and more or less be a late 1, early 2 pick in rookie drafts.
Vegas is also someone to see if they get a running back. I think, people are on the Zamir White train. Don't get me wrong, Zamir White had to end the season. That was fantastic last year. But I think that's a good spot to watch. And, don't be surprised if the Rams go after. So I know Kyron had a great one, but you never know. Maybe they may be high on some guy. But with that leads me into who is a sleeper that you think could possibly sneak into day 2 that may not be someone people may be looking at. Sam, what do you think?
So for me here, sticking with some of these offensive players, I'll do a couple running backs and then I'll give a couple wide receivers here. I think running back wise, the two guys I would love to see sneak into round 3. I think round 2 would be a stretch. I'm not going to be that optimistic, but I would love to see Jalen Wright and Marshawn Lloyd sneak into round 3, especially some of these landing spots that we just talked about. I think one of those guys would make a bunch of sense on the Raiders, to be honest, behind Zamir White, because they're kind of the opposite player of Zamir White, especially Jalen Wright. I'm a big Jalen Wright fan. I think he's incredibly shifty. Wide receiver-wise, when it comes down to it, I think I'd love to see Malik Washington, Jalen Polk, or Burton and Roman Wilson. I think are all fun prospects. They all kind of have different skill sets, and they're good at different things. But if they can go day 2, it's a big deal into pushing them into the second round of rookie drafts. And as much as we want to think we can all pick out the next Puka Nacua, it's not that likely for it to happen. So draft capital is still a big deal when it comes to nailing some of these rookie picks and seeing them go today, especially.
No, that's great. I love Jalen Wright too. You hit it on the money. Nice shift. He knows how to get between his tackles, and he has some good breakaway speed there as well. Marshawn Lloyd, someone as well that I know a lot of people love as well. He was my RB2 for a little bit, slid down a little bit for me, but still a good running back that I can see possibly sneaking into the back end of the third there. 4 wide receivers. You brought up Jalen Polk. I love that. I think he can easily go into day 3 or day 2 and be a round 3 guy. Him and McMillan, I feel people just forgot that you're talking about Odunze, and yet no one's talking about the other 2 guys that also produce. McMillan I know got hurt, so people are a little hesitant on him there. Malik Washington, shout out our guy at the FFU, Jeremy Shulman. That's one of his sleepers. Just a solid wide receiver that is very smooth, very crisp, knows what he needs to do, knows how to get some open and some separation there as well. So I would love to see him move up in there. Burton, I've started to see him rise a little bit as well. I think that's someone that I am as a day 3, but I can see it. He did okay when he was at Alabama and became the guy. So I can see him sliding in there. Brendan Rice, I think, is someone that a lot of people are talking about. You want to talk about legacy prospects. People love all over Marvin Harrison Jr. Rice, his dad's, depending on who you're talking to, he's the greatest wide receiver talent NFL's ever seen. So the learning tree is there. Is he as that? No, I'm not saying that. And definitely he wants to groom his own self to be his own legacy, but he's definitely been taught at a young age on what football is. So I think he's definitely someone to watch. And you brought up Roman Wilson. I actually have him going round 2. That's my 5th or 4th wide receiver. I said in top 5, right? That's my 4th wide receiver, and I had the Chargers going up. Spoiler: I had Pittsburgh trading up for Washington's pick, which is 4th overall, and they get Ladd McConkey. They jump ahead and they draft Ladd McConkey ahead of the Chargers. But the Chargers like, okay, we're just gonna get our guy, Roman Wilson. I think that's what we're gonna see this, and it's. I just think it's just gonna fit. We're gonna see Roman Wilson go in that 2nd, then we're gonna see Corum go in the 3rd, and we're just gonna see Harbaugh bring over some Michigan team of what he had. That just sounds fun. It doesn't happen. I don't know. He may throw it and say, you know what, I already coached you. I want to do it with new people. We'll find out there. Also phenomenal picks, Malachi Corley, I think someone that a lot of people are high on as well. I haven't going back in the 2nd here, but that's someone that as well, he has the frame, he has the skill set you want. If you scout the collar, scout the helmet, you're probably not on him because he went to Western Kentucky. He's not going to one of these pristine top schools or anything like that. So that's a big one to watch here. And our next one, actually, we want to talk about, though, we talked about Bowers, tight end 1 of the class. But landing spots make a difference, right? We saw that with Kyle Laporta last season, right? So with that, which tight end do you want to see next, and what would be that dream location for you on them? You can give a couple of.
So I'll answer 2. I still think Jatavian Sanders is the 2nd best tight end in the class, just overall. So I think he's probably the 2nd one to go. But the guy I'm most excited about to see if he goes is going to be Jaheim Bell. I just think he's a very athletic player, and he profiles more as a fantasy football tight end than an NFL tight end, which if we're talking about NFL football, it's one thing, but we're kind of talking about dynasty fantasy football. So we want the pass catching ability of a Jaheim Bell, and I would love to see him go somewhere like the Jets, maybe somewhere we can fall into a 2A, 2B kind of pass catching role. Obviously people are going to say the Bengals, and there's going to be some other landing spots that would be great as well. I just think there's a little space there with the Jets, and I think Bell is an interesting prospect. I think he could be kind of more like what people wanted Chig to be, kind of that that not worse version, because I really liked Chig, but Chig in a good offense. I think that would be the hope. If he lands on the right spot, he's a very athletic guy that I think could do a couple things with the ball in his hand.
I love that. And Jaheim Bell, just off the top thinking about it, I feel like I would love if the Commanders get a tight end. I know they picked up Zach Ertz, but Thomas isn't there, so it's like is Thomas there actually?
No,
I don't
they
think
cut him.
he's gone. So it's Zach Ertz there now. So I because you brought up Jaheim Bell, and I started thinking about what landing spots would I like it, and you brought up the fantasy impact there. I think if he went there, I would love that. If he's sitting behind Ertz, learning a little bit, getting pro ready and stuff like that. I feel like that would be fantastic for him. Actually, I would absolutely love that. Ja'Tavion Sanders, great pick there. I think that's someone there as well. That he's someone that I think will be fantasy relevant. And get some good capital, that I think he can transition well into what the NFL wants. Just a bigger frame guy there. Which big? I'm trying to see if I have him taken anywhere. I don't think I have a tight end in the second going. I don't have 8 tight ends in the second at this time. So he's someone there. Sanat is the guy I know a lot of people are heavy on that. They're waiting for him to come off the board. Question, like you mentioned, Sanders is your 2 because Bowers is the one of the class, right? But before we get landing spots, there's an opportunity then for Sanders to be tight end 1 because Bowers right now is behind Mayer. So is there opportunity for Sanders to be tight end 1 in the class?
0%. No, I still think it's Bowers, and I like Michael Mayer, but I'm just not concerned, man. The draft capital says all it needs to with Brock Bowers, and the fact that they took Bowers with Mayer on the roster basically means they probably had Bowers as a top 5 pick, and they couldn't pass him up. So I'm just really not too concerned. I think, I'm really crossing my fingers it's Gardner Minshew and not Aiden O'Connell just for a fantasy relevant season. I don't really care how the Raiders do if they win or lose. I'm not a Raiders fan. But fantasy-wise, we all want Gardner Minshew because I think Adams, Jacoby, and Bowers could be pretty good. I'm not going to reach for the ceiling here, but I'm at least going to try to touch the fan a little below the ceiling. So
yeah, I like that. They're probably going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. And then when they're doing 3 wide receivers, like Bowers is going to fix that slot position, be the big slot for them. So, yeah, it sucks for Mayer because people liked Mayer a lot coming out, but sometimes that's how it goes. Teams they get the player and they're like, oh, guess what? We can upgrade and we're going to get our guy even at the same position. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about Bowers, honestly. It's just it might take a year or 2 for him to be the true high end tight end, similar to what we've been with Kyle Pitts the last couple of years. I could see something similar to that playing out.
That's fair. I love that. Do you have any specific sleepers as the tight end position and where you would like them to go, Jesse?
I think outside of the top, like we talked about Bell, Sonnette, like Sanders, those guys. Once the other guy I think is maybe a sleeper for day 3, maybe not day 2, but it's Cade Stover. Like he's the one that stands out to me of kind of the forgotten guy of this group because he's late to the position at tight end. He was learning it at Ohio State. He did a lot his last couple of years. So if he say, like, for instance, if the Jets take him around 4 or 5, that becomes a very interesting pick because it's an open tight end connected to Aaron Rodgers, and you can kind of play the game with that. So I think he's the guy outside of the few big names. Like, he stands out to me. Maybe if he gets the draft capital, like, I'll have a little bit of interest in him.
That's fair. I like that pick, too. Day 2 is going to be wild. I think we'll see some trades. There's rumor of Higgins. You brought up Debo Ayuk, possibly. There's just some big moves. We may see some guys move up for some running backs. I think for round 2, we're going to see a lot of the defensive guys go off just because you might see a run of receivers. We'll see a lot of defensive guys, a few tackles here. No quarterbacks here. And I know this isn't necessarily a question I had for y'all, but is there a quarterback that sneaks into day 2? And if so, who?
I think Really, the only one that I can keep in mind would be maybe Rattler sneaks in somehow. Someone saw what they liked. Maybe look for the Falcons. I'm just joking. Take that. Yeah, I mean, I think you can see the tools with Rattler. I'm not saying that I would take him in the second round, but you can see the prospect and the ceiling with him. And I mean, I guess the same thing could be said of like someone like, the guy from Tennessee as well, Milton. But I mean, I think we kind of saw that with Hooker, and like Hooker didn't go in the second round. So I don't really see it happening this year. I think you nailed it, SC, dude. I think it's going to be defense. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw freaking 9 wide receivers come off today. Like, we see wide receivers go day 2, and we see a lot we like, and then we see Tyquan Thornton's every year where we're just like, that was out of left. Like, where did that one? We're going to see that happen today, guaranteed. We're going to see ones where you're like, I've never even heard of that guy. Or like, I saw one clip of him. Like, why do they like him so much? But that's why day 2 is awesome. Like, day 1's the most fun because of the excitement. But day 2 usually has more fantasy football players because of the running backs finally kind of coming into the fold. So
100%.
That's
like,
right.
yeah, there's going to be some guys that we like and some guys we hate, to your point. Like, Alec Pierce is another guy for the Colts. Like, theoretically, like, I would like to see them replace Alec Pierce in that offense with the Colts. Let somebody who can actually do that downfield threat a little bit better. So, instance, if the Colts take A.D. Mitchell that pick, right, it becomes a lot more interesting. So, you can talk yourself in situations. But, yeah, one of these running wide receivers is going to go to a spot, and you're like, why would they take him round 2? Like, it's bound to happen every year this happens. So, I'm not sure who it's going to be, but I'm excited to see who it will be.
I'm looking at this now. It's going to be someone like Javon Baker, Devontae Walker, I think are going to be someone that people end up sleeping in there. You could throw in Jacob Cowley maybe, shit. Watch it be like Bud Means. Watch it be Luke McCaffrey. Just watch someone be like, you know what, we're going to take it and go ahead. Watch it be the 49ers. Just be like, you know what, let's do it. Let's go ahead and get him in the third round there. Why not? Pair you with your brother. Quarterbacks, I think there's some interesting things. You brought up Rattler. I think that's a big one. I think a lot of people are heavy on him. And that's someone, I've been saying it. I think before the landing spots, before Nix became a first-round pick, I was saying I'd rather take Rattler at cost of what he would be, knowing he's probably not going to get a starting opportunity over what Nix is at the end of the first, early second, because you probably get Rattler. I mean, depending on where he goes, end of your second, if not end of your third, maybe depending on where he's at, right? But put Rattler in New York behind Aaron Rodgers, put him in LA behind Matt Stafford. I would love that. No, Cody on here said Jordan Travis is his guy. That's interesting because he's coming off injury too, right? So what can Travis do? He can be something that makes an impact and, just learns from a vet as well. So a lot of fun things will happen. Day 2, it is upon us just on what we can do here. Very excited to see what happens starting an hour earlier here as well. Before we let go, though, Sam, closing thoughts. Where can people find you, and closing thoughts on day 2?
Yeah, for sure. So first off, thanks for having me on, SC. If you guys are looking to find me, just like you said, Twitter, Where's Waldorf, or YouTube at Sam Waldorf. That would be the main one. Just started my channel a couple months ago, fully solo, so I'd love to connect with all you. One more player as my final thought that I kind of been spacing, but I think Johnny Wilson is going to be a curious one. See where he goes. I just love. There's no one else like him. I mean, I don't really know how to explain him. Like he kind of is like one of those guys where 2 years from now he's not going to be in the league, or you're going to be like, why did everyone pass on this guy? Mm-hmm. And I really don't think there's any in between. But I'm very excited. Thanks for having me on. And yeah.
And who knows, Johnny Wilson may transition to tight end too. So maybe he's the tight end one of the class if he gets that spot. We'll see. Fun times. As always, guys from Fantasy Football Universe, Aaron St. Dennis, Jeremy Sobin, my co-host here, Jay Moeller. I am SC Romero. This is the PPR. So until next time, guys, we appreciate y'all joining in.